Okay, here we go. Stand by. 3, 2, 1.
The thinking atheist. It's not a person. It's a symbol. An idea.
The population of atheists in this country is going through the roof.
Rejecting faith. Pursuing knowledge. Challenging the sacred.
If I tell the truth, it's because I tell the truth. Not because I put my hand on a book and made a wish.
And working together for a more rational world.
Take the risk of thinking for yourself. Much more happiness, truth, beauty, and wisdom will come to you that way.
Assume nothing. Question everything. And start thinking. This is the Thinking Atheist Podcast, hosted by Seth Andrews.
Talking here with Nick Fish. He's the president of American Atheists. Full disclosure, I serve on the board of directors, so it's not like he's a stranger, like we know each other. Hey, Nick. How you doing, man?
Good, Seth. How are you?
We are sitting here at the Secular Student Alliance National Conference 2024, and we both given our presentations and kind of have that post-speech, like, whew. Like, I didn't see anybody
I can relax
walk out
now.
during yours. Yeah. Fortunately, I hope nobody walked out.
No.
So I wanted to talk to you about the vouchers. It was the focus of what you were talking about. I'm in Oklahoma, and the big brouhaha going on there is about this private Catholic charter school that Oklahoma wants to use taxpayer money for. Total violation of church and state. And I knew it was a problem. I didn't know it was that big a problem. So I guess we'll start with Oklahoma. Maybe you know more about it at this measure than I do because you got all the lawyers and stuff on it. But what the hell? What's going on, Nick?
Well, so these are two sort of separate but related problems. There are charter schools, which are given a special permission to run, and they're usually outside the standard structure of public schools, but they are, in essence, sort of public schools. Now, what Oklahoma is innovating on, if we can call it that, is for the first time creating a completely religious charter school, a charter school that is run by, that is managed by, and that has the rules of the Catholic Church. That is as clear a violation of the Establishment Clause as possible. This is a school that would not have to follow any rules related to curriculum, to discrimination, to providing special ed, to any of these, the requirements that every public school has to do. That's sort of the bottom line of what a lot of charter schools, how they have quote unquote better results, is they don't have to serve everyone. They don't have to protect everyone's rights in the same way, even though they're quasi-public. Now, with charter schools, they're usually a separate sort of nonprofit organization, but in this case, that nonprofit organization is the Catholic Church. And so, even the state attorney general, who is a Republican, has filed a lawsuit challenging this. Taxpayers have filed lawsuits challenging this. Clergy in Oklahoma have filed lawsuits challenging this. I think everybody in the state of Oklahoma basically is suing over this at this point, which they should be. People should be outraged. I don't think evangelical Christians are particularly interested in funding with their tax dollars, Catholic schools. And they shouldn't be. And no one should be in that position of using taxpayer money to fund the indoctrination of children into a religion that isn't yours. Frankly, no one should be funding the indoctrination of children into any religion with taxpayer money, even if it was your own. But that's what they're trying to do here. And this is entirely a result of the state superintendent, who is just hell-bent on doing anything he can to erode, break down, demolish not just church-state separation, but our public school system as a whole. And that's how all these things are related. That all of these measures, whether it is charter schools, Catholic charter school, or whether it's vouchers, taking taxpayer money out of the public school, giving it to people to then pay tuition at private religious schools, and that's what vouchers usually are, it's about dismantling public education. And if you follow the through line from this is all the way back to the earliest days of the civil rights era, you can trace a through line that it's about demolishing public schools because public schools are the greatest tool of social mobility, of equality, of generating opportunity for people to get themselves out of poverty, to mingle and mix and get to know people in their communities who are different from them, bringing together people from different faiths, from different races, from different economic status, and building a democracy, making sure that people are educated. And Christian nationalists have no interest in seeing that. In fact, they want the opposite of that. They want a certain group of people in power, and public schools threaten that. And that's why they've gone from the earliest days of creating segregation academies to finding out that that didn't message test especially well. People were slightly horrified when you just said out loud, oh yeah, we don't want black people to get educated. We don't want our children mixing with black people. And that's what they said. To changing their tone a little bit, to changing the message to say, oh, we just want competition. We just want open markets and, a market opportunity for schools. The problem with that messaging, and the problem if you think about it for more than 5 seconds, is then you're saying that children are the commodity, that there are winners and losers in marketplaces. And what you're saying, if you are creating a market of public schools or primary schools, that some children are going to lose. And I don't think that we should be starting from that position in schooling, that we should be in a position where every student should have the opportunity to succeed, that anybody, regardless of their need, whether it's that they need special attention because they have a learning disability or because they are doing great and they want an accelerated program. I think we should be funding all of that. We should be making sure that teachers have the resources they need to give everyone the type of education that they need and that would enable them to succeed. And that's what public education is supposed to do. And it's truly one of the greatest innovations in the history of the world, and it happened in America. And so when they talk about American exceptionalism, I wish they would talk about how exceptional our education system is and not some idea that we were ordained by God. God didn't do this, we did this, because we looked and said, you know what we really need here is to educate people.
I think it's interesting to watch the people who say we're the greatest country on the face of the planet. And then you're like, okay, great, by what metric? And then we're like, okay, crime rate, no. Teen pregnancy, no. Education, no. Who's most warlike? Healthcare system. We're one of it's very much an emotional. It's kind of an identity, know. And we see a lot of thinking shut down. The one nation under God crowd. You try to educate them about the founders and about the Constitution. I mean, I see people waving the Constitution to defend this idea that we need to have the 10 Commandments on Capitol grounds. Have you read the Constitution? I mean, that's the question, right? Have you read
the 10 Commandments? The answer is no in both cases.
It has been interesting, though, to watch Oklahoma AG Drummond and Superintendent of Public Instruction Ryan Walters go head-to-head on Twitter. Like they're just going after each other with the lawsuits and everything else. And, of course, with Walters, it's a holy war.
Yeah.
Everybody's them. He's going after the woke have come. Yep. They want to strip away from your children. And I think it's been interesting to watch how they've weaponized this holy war narrative against people like us who just say it's not fair. Yeah. It's weird.
Well, and I think, it's ironic because they're so hell-bent on claiming a level of persecution. And what you just said there is really interesting, that he's spinning this narrative that the woke or the atheists, the godless commies or whatever, are trying to take something away from children. And it's exactly the reverse, right? It's every accusation here is a confession on the part of your state superintendent. Because the only person trying to take anything away from any kid is him. He's trying to take away millions of dollars from education funding to funnel it into the Catholic Church. Period. That's what's happening. He's trying to take away millions of dollars, giving it to families that can already afford to pay tuition at private schools, to give them a tax break. And then guess who's picking up the bill when those programs spiral out of control because there's no top level that they max out at for the amount of money that goes to vouchers? It's everyday working class taxpayers whose property taxes go up because we're funneling this money now into private schools that, again, people were already paying. It's not new people going into those private schools with these vouchers. It's people that were already there and paying the tuition. Rich families that were able to pay that tuition. That's who's taking anything away from kids. It's him. It's him and his ilk, not us.
Let me jump in here. As I understand it, the vouchers go and are supposedly going to benefit people who want school choice, #choice, to send their kids. But it doesn't remotely cover the full cost of a tuition.
Right.
What it does is then they continue to send their kids to public school. So the voucher made essentially no difference to those who are of moderate or modest or no income.
Right.
But the middle to upper class, they essentially get a break. They get a discount on the private school their kids were attending anyway. Am I reading that right?
That's exactly correct. So if you're, a lot of these vouchers, so I believe it's in Arizona, the vouchers were capped at about $7,000. And, please fact check my number. I think that's about right. But the tuition was, twice that, 3 times that per year. So it doesn't give a genuine choice of someone who doesn't have the income to send their kid to a $14,000 school either. So they just stay in public school. So it's the people that already could afford to spend 20 grand on tuition. They're just getting a tax break, basically. They're getting money back in their pocket. And who's paying for it? It's working class people paying their property taxes. And by the way, it's the school system paying the choice because that money gets taken out of their budget. So now those school districts which are already starved for resources, you're taking money away from them, but not reducing the number of students they have to serve. They still have to serve the same number of students. It's just that the person that wasn't even attending their school in the first place, it's a math trick to take away the money that would have gone to them, but they're not attending your school. So now you have schools that are starved for resources. They don't have up-to-date textbooks. They don't have enough equipment in their labs. They don't have instruments for their kids that want to play in music class. They don't have enough teachers, all of these things. And you're taking millions of dollars out of their budget and funneling it into private, often, usually, typically religious schools.
So if I'm in Oklahoma, or actually, how many states? I think it was almost all states. Is that right?
So 49 states have some type of school privatization scheme. The only state that doesn't is North Dakota.
Which one's the worst, do you think, right now?
I think the least accountable one is the law that was passed in Arizona. By most metrics, the Arizona program is outrageous. And the ironic thing is that voters have literally never approved at a statewide level a voucher scheme. Every time it has been on the ballot, every time it's been up for a vote, it has lost. Vouchers have lost. The American people, voters in every state, support public schools, and they want their schools to take care of kids. They want kids to be able to go to school. They don't want to have to pay tuition. They think that, hey, I'm paying my taxes. I want to make sure my kid can get a good education. Period. It's that simple. This is not something where atheists and agnostics and humanists and teachers are out of step with Americans. In fact, we are in lockstep with the overwhelming majority of Americans. It is extremists on the Christian nationalist side of things, like your state superintendent, who are dramatically out of step with everyday Americans. And so we need to reinforce that. We need to proudly be on the side of protecting public education. And the last thing I'll mention on that is when we surveyed 34,000 atheists, humanists, and non-religious people a few years ago at American Atheists, we asked people, which of these issues do you think the atheists and secular movement should be engaging on? Do you want to know what the number one issue of all respondents that they said we should be engaging on? More than 90%. Protecting public schools. Number one issue. If you want to know where keeping crosses off of public land, and, I think it's a problem, but you want to know what percentage of people thought that should be our top priority? Almost no one. Really? and so if we're talking about our prioritization, focusing on issues like this where the overwhelming majority of Americans agree with us, where it cuts across partisan lines, where every time we put it to voters, public schools win, and adding and including church-state separation to the broader sort of tapestry of civil rights work, civil liberties work, showing that we're serious about protecting that, this is a great issue for us to do that, for us to be good partners, for us to get engaged, and for us to give our community an opportunity to get involved and to build power. This is the time to do it. This is an issue where we are winning, and we can win, and we have to continue winning because the other side is so well organized and has billions and billions and billions of dollars behind them. The Betsy DeVosses of the world, the David Kochs of the world, the Christopher Rufos of the world. All of these people, they have a well-oiled machine pushing back, but it's entirely fraudulent. It's astroturfed. It's not real. All they have is money.
More of my conversation with Nick Fish next. I want to talk about that word astroturfing. What is it? What's it mean? What are the implications? We'll find out next. Bonus broadcast this week on a critical issue. As we're talking about the school voucher program, my guest, Nick Fish, president of American Atheists, has been talking about a tactic called astroturfing. Now, explain that term. You did yesterday, but for my audience, what is astroturfing?
Yeah, so everybody knows what the grassroots are, right? The grassroots support, popular support coming from the bottom up. If you were a football fan at all, you know that what they found is that having real grass kind of got tore up. So they replaced it with really bad-looking green carpet that was astroturf. It was fake grass. It was expensive. It didn't work really well, but it didn't get torn up, and it was a lot easier to maintain than grass. And that metaphor works really well because true genuine grassroots work is tough because you're talking with and working with people that have day jobs, that have families, that, this is the third or fourth or fifth thing that they're working on each day. So it takes a long time and it's really hard to do genuine, strong grassroots organizing, but it has the advantage of being real. Astroturfing is the idea of, or the practice of investing a ton of money into a few extremists or a few, just a few people to give the appearance of popular support, to give the appearance of grassroots support. And that's what the David Kochs and the Betsy DeVosses do with this type of work, and the Moms for Liberty. When you look at book bans, and we saw all this coverage about how there was a popular backlash against all these books. And what actually was the case is that I think it was 5 or 6 people were responsible for 50% of all book bans nationwide, because they were just a bunch of busybodies who had nothing better to do with their time than sit back and take a bunch of money from the Kochs and from Betsy DeVos and her ilk to call and whine about the fact that there was a book they didn't like in a public school somewhere. They don't genuinely enjoy any level of true support. These are extremists who just have a bunch of money, which allows them to spin up very quickly, and it takes a little bit longer for grass to grow. And so we have to be cognizant of that. We have to always be organizing. We have to always be preparing to build genuine grassroots support. Otherwise, this astroturfing campaign can quickly dominate the conversation, and then we have to undo a bunch of damage. And that's exactly what we've seen with this Moms for Liberty, school privatization work. Is they get out over their skis, they expand too fast, they grab a bunch of stuff and really show their extremist colors, and then the real Americans, real people look at that and go, hey, wait a second, this is terrible and I don't like this. But that takes a little bit of time. And in the meantime, kids pay the price. And that's just what we're dealing with right now.
As I'm talking to Nick, we're sitting here in a conference room next to the main room. So people are apparently applauding through the walls at the words that you were saying. Just a couple more minutes if you got it. Nick Fish, president of American Atheists. I saw my own governor, Kevin Stitt, midterm election, gets elected. First thing he does is take the podium and dedicate every square inch of the state of Oklahoma to Jesus. Mm-hmm. And I thought to myself, what about all the Native American? I mean, we have tons of Native American land, right? What about all the Native Americans who don't hold to a Christian faith tradition? What about Oklahoma taxpaying Muslims and Hindus and Sikhs? What message did he just send to them? Essentially, you're either renting or you're trespassing on Jesus's land.
Yep.
And I'm struck by him, by Walters, by all of these other people. And I look at, and you tell me, this may just be a subjective personal opinion, is one of the problems with our resistance that we're crap at organizing? Because the Kochs and, all of is it the family what's it called?
Family Research Council and
FRC and all these major lobbyist groups and political action committees and religious.
Excuse me, they're a church. That's why they're not subjected to any audits or any filing of paperwork. They're a church now. How dare you?
They are. They have been at this for 50 freaking years. Yep. And I feel like it's hard to get us focused. Have you perceived a challenge with all of us independent minders?
Yeah, I mean, so this is one of the things that everybody in any movement deals with. And it goes back to what I was just talking about genuine grassroots support. So if you have money, and these guys do, they have billions of dollars that are aimed at deregulating, destroying, demolishing, and discrediting the social safety net because they don't want to pay taxes. And that's a lot of what it goes back to. And so they've weaponized racism and they've weaponized Christian nationalism to get to that end. That's the sort of David Koch idea. Because David Koch is an atheist. He's not religious.
Explain to a few, I've got international listeners.
The Koch brothers are these manufacturing magnates that have funded basically every
billionaires
quasi-libertarian right-wing cause for decades in the United States. And yeah, they're billionaires. One of them has died, but they're very old, and one of them died, and the other one is still around and funding all this stuff. And so, you can parachute someone in, you can hire somebody to go into some state and spend all of their time organizing people, and it pays dividends. We're dealing with, and to give a good example here, folks have maybe heard of Project 2025, which is this basically a manual, 1,000-page manual from a bunch of right-wing think tanks about how to implement a Christian theocracy in America, how to convert the federal government into a an agency basically just staffed top to bottom with sycophants and extremists aligned with a future Trump administration. But the policy goals in there include making it harder to get a divorce, making it illegal to access contraception, making it illegal to use IVF, in vitro fertilization, just criminalization of LGBTQ people, pushing LGBTQ people out of public schools, out of any job, really. It's a manual for extremism. The budget just to produce that report from the Heritage Foundation was $25 million. Do you want to know what the combined budget of the Freedom from Religion Foundation, American Atheists, the American Humanist Association, Secular Coalition for America, Americans United, and the Center for Inquiry is? Less than $25 million. All of those organizations together have less of a budget than the Heritage Foundation put into this one report. And so that gives you an idea of the scope of the problem. Heritage Foundation is a $100 to $200 million a year organization. Alliance Defending Freedom, which is the most absurdly named group out there, a Christian nationalist law firm that generates lawsuits out of nothing to sue, and the courts go along with it often. They have a budget in almost of $100 million. And this is just two groups that we're talking about, and they're 10 times bigger than we are, than all of us combined. But what they don't have on their side is popular support. They know that they have to lie, steal, and cheat to get their goals accomplished. They know that they have to make it impossible for people to vote. They know that they have to purge people from the voter rolls. They know that they have to solidify anti-democratic mechanisms in order for their side to win. Because anytime their actual policy agenda gets up for a vote, it loses. Because people look at it and go, wow, this is extreme, and even I, a Christian, couldn't support this. And so we need to highlight exactly how extreme these people are. But again, remind ourselves that we always need to be organizing. We need to always build capacity. We can't just do this every other year. We can't just do this every 4 years when there's a presidential election coming up. We need to create genuine sources of community for people so they know where to go when something pisses them off and they want to get involved. Where do I turn? Oh, I know exactly where I can go. But we also need to normalize our community's participation in politics. I think we have this idea as atheists often that if we just make the best argument in court, we're going to win. That they won't have any choice. I think people often think of the legal system as Harry Potter, that if you just say the magic words, a spell, a Patronus is going to run out of your mouth and smack Sam Alito in the face, and he'll say, I have no choice now. That's not how that works.
That's too bad, because I'd love to see that.
I'd pay to see it. It's an upside down flag that hits him in the face. But that's not how it works. And so we have to be involved in politics. We have to be involved in electoral work. And people think of that as some dirty word. It's not. We have reality on our side, but we also have the overwhelming majority of our fellow Americans on our side on so many issues. But we have to be willing to engage, and we have to be willing to get out there, stand shoulder to shoulder with people we agree with on the issues, which means that it might be people we disagree with on other things. It might be people that we strongly disagree with on the religion question, but who, on the question of whether or not public schools are good, actually, or whether or not they want a theocracy, we're going to agree with them. We find common ground with them. Some of the most effective messengers on these issues are groups like Christians Against Christian Nationalism, the Baptist Joint Committee, who's here this weekend. Our faith allies who agree with us, who care about church-state separation because they've seen what happens when government picks sides, when picks winners and losers in religion. They're the people who can really help us in this fight because it represents the majority of Americans. It represents the majority of people that we need to win those fights. And so we have to be organizing constantly. We have to be joining things. And I know that's often a scary thing for people who, and I don't want to belittle that. It's a scary thing for people who are leaving a religion that was supposed to have their back, where they had a sense of community, and then they got pushed out because their beliefs changed, but their values didn't. The word that they used to describe themselves went from progressive Christian to atheist, or went from conservative Christian to, actually I'm an atheist, right? And they left, and then suddenly they found themselves with no support system, and they're worried about being vulnerable again to that. And I get it. It's hard, but it's what we need if we want to create a better world. We have to be willing to put ourselves out there. We have to be willing to be vulnerable a little bit and go out there and be a part of a community again.
All right. Before we lose the room, at the end of your presentation, you gave some resources. I know one was linked to American Atheists, but I mean, where in the world would you send people if they're like, I want to help, no idea how to help? Where would you send them?
First thing I would say is go to atheist.org/sign up just get on our email list. We send out at least one email a week about something that's going on in policy that we hope is relevant, we believe is relevant to people. And then we link from there to some other groups. But I think, some other resources, some other organizations I would certainly suggest are groups like PEN America or the National Coalition for Public Education. If you're concerned about schools, they're, right front and center in this fight in Oklahoma and fight against vouchers. Great starting place. And then, our allies and partners at Americans United are doing great work on this. That's Americans United for Separation of Church and State. Their website is au.org. So atheist.org, au.org. You'll find good resources.
I'll throw those links in the description box for easy clickage.
Got to click.
All right. Nick Fish, President, American Atheists, and a good friend. I appreciate your work. Thanks for helping to lead the charge out there on the front lines. Honestly, I don't know how you're so good-natured about it. I wake up every morning and want to just put my head through sheetrock sometimes, but what are we going to do? Quit, right?
Right. No, I mean, that's it is, I've seen the power of making change. And once you get to that, once you're able to see what happens when you can get something done that improves people's lives, that protects people's rights, that really matter to somebody, especially people that no one else is advocating for. Once you do that, it's intoxicating. And it's like, yeah, we did a good thing today. And that, I think, drives a lot of it is we can do this. We have the power to do this. We just have to organize. We just have to get organized and do it. And yeah, not lose hope may not be the right word, but
maybe not lose
sense
heart.
of purpose.
Yeah,
don't lose that sense of purpose, I think, is the best way to put it.
Good stuff. Nick Fish, thanks again.
Thanks, Seth.
Follow The Thinking Atheist on Facebook and Twitter for a complete archive of podcasts and videos, products like mugs and t-shirts featuring the Thinking Atheist logo, links to atheist pages and resources, and details on upcoming free thought events and conventions. Log on to our website, thethinkingatheist.com.